Hey guys, good morning. So this morning let's get over our egos. Yes, it's possible. It's possible that this is the last breakfast where you have an ego and where you have to be concerned about your ego and make sure that your ego doesn't get too big and shankala bangala shvangala. I thought this was already made clear to you by Bentinho and Ra and several other advanced teachers. But if it's not yet, then let me make it clear for you. There can come no advancement, there can come no real understanding from relating to the concept of the ego. This is a quote, or rather a paraphrasing of something that Ra said directly in their book when the questioner tried to ask something about the ego. And I think it's sick that this virus is still running in the spiritual communities, to refer back to the ego and to make sure that you don't get too egoistic, or rather that your ego doesn't get boasted too much. Because it's very easy if you just think about it, if you just backtrack one track from there. What is it that would want to get rid of that? Wouldn't that be pretty egoistic? To want to be the one who have rid yourself of the ego and therefore never have to do it again, therefore you can be righteous. So this is a very easy demonstration of how real understanding can't come from that concept, because it's working against itself. It's relevant towards achieving what we want to achieve in this group. If you're going to keep referring to parts of yourself as the ego and therefore not take in my compliment, or therefore not feel privileged and honored to be in this group, for instance. Let's take that as an example. The people who responded to coming into this group with like, whoa, this is so boosting to my ego. So think about that for a ego strategy, or like a programming strategy. How smart of a strategy isn't that? That whenever a compliment comes that actually hits you, whenever someone says something to you that actually hits the spot, which actually feels like, whoa, that was such a huge validation of who I feel that I am, but I'm still not allowing through, totally. So I'm still not believing fully that I'm it. But when someone mentioned it, very directly, someone managed to point it out, like me in this case, did it to some of you, then we're gonna make them call that something else than themselves. How brilliant of a strategy of staying disempowered isn't that? It's genius. And you have been tricked into that trap. And it's in most of the spiritual communities, and it's keeping most of the spiritual communities small and limited and compact into themselves. So what you tackle this with is, one, just stop referring to the ego. Stop referring to it as something else than yourself. It's a very simple point. And two, you can tackle it with, or like come at that thing with a new energy of simply believing in yourself. Simply seeing that you are good. Investigating deeply into yourself and seeing if your intentions are good. And if your intentions are good, then you know that you can trust yourself. Then you know that you can blow yourself up. Then you know that you can become more. Because you want the earth, right, to become more goodness, more people who wants the best for everyone. So one day you will have to drop this. One day you will have to just embrace yourself and say, fuck it, whatever it is, ego, me, or whatever. And then when you drop it and you stop referring to it, your whole spiritual journey and everything will become so much easier, because suddenly you don't have to have this schizophrenic double personality to refer to. It's like you, and then it's this ego, and what is the ego, and I want to get rid of the ego. If that was actually you wanting to get rid of the ego, it can't be, because your true self doesn't want to get rid of anything, and you know that's true. So therefore, the whole thing who is trying to get rid of the ego is even more ego. And people often have thought about this concept, but the thing is that still you don't draw the conclusion that that whole thing is just redundant. You still think, oh yeah, it's just really hard to figure out. Like, it's really hard to get rid of the ego. No, it's not hard to get rid of the ego because it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as the ego. There is you. And there is you, and there is you. And you could say there is you and the world. You could just like, yeah, point out your ego to me. And then look at the person which you find really confident, which you want to be more like. And then try to find their ego. Can you see how it doesn't compute? Can you see how you just assume it to be different in their case without any sort of backed up reality except for your own belief about them? So a very good start would at least be point number 1, to not refer to your ego as this thing that you want to deprive of life. You're basically, you're taking a part of yourself and you want to isolate it and you want to deprive it of life. You want to like choke it to death. Oh, let me not feed my ego, because then it will keep living. Does that sound like a very nice intention to you? Does that sound like a very benevolent service to others action? Deprive someone of their joy, deprive something inside of you of its life? And why? So that I can be happy. Oh, so you want to deprive someone so that you can be happy. It sounds kind of like Hitler or something like that. Wanting someone else to die so that you finally can be happy in that person's or that thing's absence. From now on, I'm going to refer to all of you that refer to the ego as ego Hitlers. Or ego Nazis, we can say. That's better. So, yeah, don't be an ego Nazi. Then you will just see how your whole game changes, how you suddenly just can like assess your whole life and suddenly you are in power of everything and you haven't given away your power to this ego to begin with and then having to fight against it. No, instead it becomes this different process, so stuff will change. Be prepared, stuff will change in a good way and sometimes in a way which will be more reflective and more interesting because it's like, okay, so why do I want this? Okay, so why does this feel good to me? Oh, so why is this a part of my resonance? And suddenly you can start to encapsulate more of yourself and see more of your purpose, see more of where you come from, of what you're here to bring. But if you keep this concept of the ego in the mind, then a part of yourself you have just like segregated and put out there. And of course you can't get a full picture of yourself and what you're here to bring. Because you just squeezed away your confidence, basically. The confidence and the ego are like meshed together. And you have somehow managed to, you're trying to get away from the ego and you're trying then also, probably not your intention, but what you're doing is that you're also keeping the confidence at bay. You're also keeping the self-trust at bay. Instead, embrace both. And then trust that you will clarify and purify out if you have some distorted needs or wants or desires. If you have something that you would term egoistic needs or desires or wants. Work with them from embracing them, from, oh, this is a part of me, why is this a part of me, what do you need, how can I provide that for you, in a way where I don't infringe on others' free will. You can trust yourself enough to do that. I believe in you, and you should believe in yourself too. You would be able to control that power. It's a power. It's a power that you have segregated because you were afraid in the past of taking it on, because you were afraid of misusing it. But by now, you're powerful and controlled enough, you're advanced enough to where you can take back on that free will portion. You can take back on that power. Pick back up the staff. And suddenly you can use what other people would maybe perceive as your ego, which to you isn't a thing anymore. So it starts to get kind of funny. But you can use that to your advantage. You can play with that, you can use that to be of service. So after this video, tell me if anyone is still doubting about still being an ego Nazi. That means still referring back to their ego and having it as something that I need to get rid of, and get clear on if it's something that you really want or not. Bye.